It is time. Welcome to today's webinar on future-proofing your contact center and customer experience, brought to you by CCW Digital and Linklive. I'm Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst for CCW, and your host for today's discussion. Customers don't want disparate, fragmented, one-off experiences. They want journeys. Agents don't want to fumble through disconnected systems and convoluted processes. They crave frictionless empowerment. But despite knowing this, despite hearing about the need for seamless and consistent connectivity for decades, so many contact centers continue to struggle in this regard. Less than 1/4 feel that they can truly deliver an omni-channel end-to-end experience. And as a result, most customers continue to complain about inefficient and frustrating and impersonal journeys where they struggle just to move between channels and then have to repeat information and deal with more frustration when they finally get to where they're supposed to be. We know that agents continue to spend too much time on effort on frustrating systems and processes, digging through knowledge that should be there, and they don't get to spend nearly enough time actually connecting with customers. And we know that supervisors can't even properly monitor their agents, let alone coach them in a way that's necessary to fix their problems and elevate their performance. If we want to move to the contact center of the future, one where CX is truly a pathway and not a roadblock to success, we must overcome these challenges. More importantly, we must build a contact center framework that allows us to scale and adapt as our expectations change. We must future-proof our operation, especially as we deal with so much shakeup and so much change in the forms of things like AI. That idea of future-proofing is the focus of today's session, where we're going to tackle areas like evolving customer expectations, delivering personalized and frictionless experiences, implementing AI without losing the human touch, and truly and meaningfully empowering agents and supervisors for success. Now, as a reminder, today's session is being recorded, and you can ask questions at any time using the console on your screen. Without further ado, let's meet our speakers. So we have two great speakers here today. One's going to be really joining me in walking through some research, some examples and recommendations. And then the other is going to really focus on what this looks like in practice. Because we have heard enough theory, we've heard enough complaints and concepts. We want to know what the future looks like and what capabilities you need to have. And so that duality of going through the problem and then getting to the solution is why I'm so excited for our panel today. But starting off, we have Pat here. So Pat, tell us about yourself, your organization, and your excitement for this topic.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Super excited to be here. Great conversation. Good topic here. So Pat Reitz, I'm part of the leadership team at Linklive. Yeah, I've been really throughout my career helping organizations, all different sizes, to define, deliver on their communication strategy. So over the last 5 years at Linklive, I've had the opportunity and really the opportunity to help over 100 organizations in future-proofing their communication strategies. So that's everything from a lot of what we're going to talk about today with the foundation to most recently talking a lot about how leverage AI and AI that really matters. So super excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thrilled to have you. And again, I know that you've done so much work in working with organizations, not just to identify yesterday's problems, not just to think about what they wish they could have solved 5 years ago, but instead where they want to go. And I'm thrilled to dive into your unique recommendations and what you've learned from those conversations. But once we get all that together, it's going to be time for Charlie to walk us through what this looks like in practice. So Charlie, tell us about your background and what you feel about this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have over 20 years of experience in contact center design, implementation, and support. And as the solution engineer and the head of the solution engineer department here at Linklive, my specialty lies in kind of constructing and putting together all of these different systems and really prioritizing, simplicity and efficiency. So, very happy to walk through all of this today and with all of you.
Thanks so much. I want to turn it over to Pat to get us started with some research, some insights, and some recommendations about the state of the CX.
Yeah, let's get after it. So, Brian, I think it's safe to say, as a customer, right, a consumer, we have a lot of demands, right? They've been growing, increasingly demanding I demand seamless support service across all the channels, right? And I want to, in lots of conversations that I have with call centers and companies I work with, I wanted to do that in a secure way. So that means, I want chat, I want email, I want the SMS capability or texting or messaging, right? I also want voice. And for all of that, sometimes I want to add a multimedia, right? Be able to turn on voice if it starts with an SMS or a chat session and it gets hard. I want to do a video conference kind of seamlessly. Yet so many contact centers, right? Contact centers, I think in the way that they have been evolving, still so many of them prioritize a lot of voice, right, as their core to their interaction. We're going to talk a lot about that today. Of course, it's important, but sometimes that singular prioritization of voice, it results in maybe a subpar customer experience. It means maybe that a contact center, they kind of become stuck, right? And stuck and not only the impacts the customer experience, but let's face it, it also impacts the employee experience, right? The agent and how happy they are. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, and I think I want to clarify here that it's important not to look at this in terms of extremes, right? Because we know from our own surveys, from a lot of surveys out there, that the phone is definitely not dead. In fact, so many customers from numerous demographics still identify phone and voice as their preferred customer service environment. So we're absolutely can't be saying just abandon your call center, just go straight digital only. However, we also know that traditional voice, to your point, introduces a lot of challenges. First of all, it's not where an increasing percentage of our customers are in their everyday lives. So just asking them to jump onto the voice for customer service when that's not what they want to be doing is not very customer centric. But additionally, even for those who still identify voice as a preference, who love talking on the phone, they acknowledge things like long wait times and limited support hours and a lot of convoluted processes and very mechanical conversations that we associate with traditional voice customer service, but actually adds to frustration. And so I want to reframe the question a little bit and get you talking about not like why we shouldn't only focus on voice, but instead where we see a duality between preserving some degree of voice, but also factoring in digital potentially as a first option.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great point. Let's just talk a little bit about voice, right? So as I mentioned up front, I've kind of been blessed with the opportunity to talk with lots of different clients, different industries, different sizes. Some have a contact center. It's an enterprise, right? It's massive, remote locations. On the other hand, there's a lot that don't, right? So you talk with organizations and they say, listen, I don't have a call center. I have employees that talk with customers, and that's where the relationship happens, right? They build relationships. So I've really noticed that in a lot of the industries we work with, there's complexity, healthcare, banking, anything that's focused on relationship. And for all of them, I'm a little bit of a product geek, right? So I have the opportunity to kind of look behind the secure walls and look and understand really what's happening. And it's a simple truth. Complex communication, it still gets done with voice. So I wholeheartedly agree that, this movement from left to right on the screen, voice is still a big piece of it, right? And in many ways, it's the preferred mode. Yet, we enable communication for large number of banks, credit unions, and I think community banks across the U.S. Just to kind of put this, to the moment of truth here is we find that a lot of the volumes on voice is probably 10 to 20x over that of messaging, chat, secure mail, and I really think that future proofing is about moving from the left to the right here. So we'll talk a lot about kind of what that means here in some of the following slides. And I think that, of course, agents and employees, they just want to be where customers are no matter what the channel, and recognition that voice isn't the only one. We offer you and our clients offer so many options, right? Because that's what, as a consumer, I expect and I want. Voice for sure, chat, SMS, maybe some media ready to turn on voice and video. Of course, that's really required, right? And I think that's part of future-proofing, part of the table stakes about making sure that you're there and you're deploying the capabilities really intelligently in the customer journey, right? So, some channels, they don't require voice, right? It's about efficiency, and it's about deflecting calls, self-service, if you will. But as I said, voice is, I think, a huge piece of this. It's where the complex stuff happens. It's where the relationship blooms, right? It's where we can have empathy. And it's true in the contact center, really, of a small one or a large one, right? So that's kind of how I think about things.
So I think the key point here is, again, it's not about an either or. It's the future of the contact center is really about understanding how different channels as well as different media types come together to deliver the most value for the customer. But I said that like I just dropped some amazing knowledge on the audience. The truth is, we know that. We know things like omni-channel, things like complementary connectivity between our touch points. We know even digital first. These are things we've been talking about for a while. But despite that, we know that so many customers are still struggling even to choose where to engage. So we say it's about honoring customer preference, and yet when push comes to shove, we're not actually honoring that preference. We're not letting them dictate the terms of the journey. And in fact, we know that brand customers not only are seeing this, but they grow to resent brands that don't give them that option. And that could be either they really want to talk on the phone and they can't get there, or they want to start in a digital channel and the digital channels aren't available to them. Either way, we know it's a real problem that customers are facing. But how serious is this problem? Is this just something that is a little bit of an annoyance that we can talk about on a webinar, or is it something that really affects brands? So Pat, walk us through this idea of channel choice and channel preference and why it's so important to consider for organizations as we move toward the future.
Yeah, I think it is important. It's one of those key things that your front end and how you communicate. It's a big impact on your brand, and I think every communication has a strategy, and those that think through really think about the communication journey, right? So I highlighted my own personal challenges around customer service across a lot of different brands that I interact with every day. I do. I love a digital first self-serve. I love that until I don't, right? And when I don't, as a customer, a member, a patient, a resident, whatever, right? As I play throughout my day and communicate with my brands, I expect that somebody in the other end will allow me to they'll pick up where I left off on a self-serve. They'll understand. So maybe I want self-serve, but if I'm on the go or if I have something more complex, like banking, the status of a wire, right? That's complex. I don't want to have to wait on hold to do that. I should be able to do things with a virtual assistant, but quickly pivot to the next available human, right? The human assistant is so important. So, I really like this point and the stat here in the 57%. I think it's about allowing customers to interact in the channel of their choice. It's really essential to a successful experience. Again, that might be an automated, virtual experience, but then shifting to a live human, right? And it's got to happen seamlessly. Like it just, dropping in channels, dropping in media. For me, I think that really is something that resonates when I talk with so many people about future-proofing, right? The channels, the features, it's the things, right? So it's not, the future isn't about the things. It's more about how we construct them and string them all together to deliver the experience, right? That's what a consumer wants. They want the experience, and they just expect that it's all kind of orchestrated. And I think behind the scenes, it's about deployment and enablement. As a consumer, if I'm in the middle of a loan process, completing a loan application, right? That's a complex thing, and so much of that happens in a digital way. But yet, as a consumer, I'm looking for an easy button when it gets hard, right? So that easy button means that it's wired up to Presence, the next available agent who has the skill, and that session may come into them fully with context to a live banker, and that banker should be able to pick it up and begin to chat, add voice, video, pull in somebody else from their organization, right? All the orchestration that just needs to bring simplicity to the conversation. That's, I think, what it's really about, making those things that are available, bringing them, wiring them all together, empowering the agent to be there for the consumer, like mentally, not with all the things they need to do behind the scenes. And that's, I think, what delivers and sets everybody up for success to deliver experience. Well, all right. I think I get fired up about that, Brian. And I think here's another data point that I really tune into. To my point earlier about the communication journey, I think the result of poor channel orchestration, if you will, it can lead to a poor customer experience and a lot of times a poor agent or employee experience. For an example, maybe an organization that might prioritize voice calls as the main, or in some ways, sometimes the only form of service. We've talked about voice. It's critical, it's important, but on its own and without the other capabilities, maybe it can degrade the customer experience. Creates a little bit of friction, inconsistency for sure. I love the stat here from your recent research at CCW. 17% of consumers surveyed that they experienced a consistent experience with a brand across sales and service. I've thought a lot about that. Like, how did they get there, right? So I think poor experiences like these, they lead to a maybe tarnish a brand's reputation, causes friction as a consumer as we think about the brand, and that always has an impact on maybe losing a customer, losing out on revenue opportunity or growth. So it's really, I think a good stat, and I think about how to improve it, right?
Yeah, and I think the consistency thing is so fascinating to me because it should be so basic, right? Like the idea that you're talking to one brand, you should get one right answer. And yet we know this has never been the case. And even before we get into the channel aspect of things, just thinking about two customer service agents from the same company, it's not unfathomable. In fact, if anything, it's quite common to have two people who work in the same department, in the same channel, sitting right next to each other, tell you different things. This happened to me with a flight recently where essentially I was promised a hotel for a flight, that got canceled overnight. Person A said it's up to corporate and they're not going to give you the hotel. Corporate says actually it's up to the person that you just spoke to and he's supposed to make the decision to give you the hotel. This is one policy with two people that are essentially working side by side and they can't actually give you a straight answer. Now you add all these different channels where you're getting different communication styles from customers because obviously, a customer and an agent may communicate something differently in chat than they do over voice. And then you add in bots versus agents. So you're adding all this complexity and consistency was already a challenge. How do we overcome this and why is it so important that we do so?
Yeah, it's just not an easy answer. And I think it's the reality. And then I look at the slide here. What points out to me is on its own the word consistent, but together consistent engagement. And I think consistent must be about where you are engaging, right? Because it's unique. All of those things need to come together to provide the bigger picture. Part of what we aim to do, and we talk about it a lot, Brian, when we onboard a client, it's about making sure that they're set up for a successful conversation, right? So product is in my title, so I naturally think about the role of the product and how we set it up, our North Star, if you will. And our North Star for our product is a successful conversation for our customer, right? A successful conversation. Now that has different meaning. It has different meaning for each organization based on the industry, how they deploy communication capabilities, not only at the organization level, but down to the user. Right, and what user, what's their skill, where are they in terms of the communication? Are they coming off of digital? Are they working with something more complex? What are the capabilities that are required? So it's not one simple out of the box thing that you say, oh, we're going to consistently build the best customer experience with your communication platform. It requires more. It requires working through, thinking through use cases, how customers go on their service and support journeys. Coming in with that knowledge is really key. It's critical. Then you got to deliver on it, right? You need to deliver on the experience, and that sometimes is harder than when it was just voice, right? When there was a day in my first job in a call center, I had voice, right? And I thought it was complex, but it's not anywhere where it is in terms of today, where there's so much more around orchestrating across channels, ensuring that every point in the communication journey is set up for success, right? The customer is experiencing a lot, and you need to make sure that the agent has all maybe the prior conversations, the context before this one, making sure that they understand it. Can the agent, see and understand the tone and the sentiment? It's just things like that you need to make it frictionless for the agent, make it more apparent that they're tuned in to the consumer, right? And again, doing that in different ways across the customer journey, you got to think through those things that ultimately lead to how you wire it up, what channels, where do you deploy it, who's available, and that leads to a better, more consistent engagement experience from my perspective.
So, you touched on agents right there at the end, and agents are so immensely important to this conversation for a few reasons. First of all, at the end of the day, like a brand's commitment to things like personalization, to consistency, to recognition and appreciation for the customer, that lives and dies by the agent. If the agent doesn't come across as informed, empathetic, passionate about their brand, then you could have the best vision in the world. Your customer experience is going to fall flat. And that's where we get things like happy agents equal happy customers. It's not literally like if your agent isn't ecstatic at all times, your customer experience is going to fall flat. But if they're not in position to be successful, then that is going to show cracks in your experience. And they're going to fail to communicate just how much you appreciate that customer. Now, we also know that even as we move toward digital, even as we see the rise of AI, we know that the role of the agent is not going away. Digitally savvy customers still expect agents for many issues. And until every bot can solve every problem in the world, we know agents are going to have to step in and provide support. So ensuring that we do have those empowered agents to be in position to be successful, that is a critical part of the contact center of the future. And Pat, I want to give you the chance to walk through sort of how your organization is thinking about the idea of employee empowerment, where brands have been struggling, and what we need to be considering moving forward.
Yeah. This one's personal for me a little bit because, I think as I think about those comments, this slide, the agent experience, one, I started my career in a call center, and it's hard. It's hard, right, to be there when you have to do all these things. I worked at a few different organizations prior to Linklive, and one of my favorite places was an organization that was focused on employee engagement, right? And they talked a lot about the service profit chain, right? It's essentially happy employees, they make happy customers, which leads to loyalty, growth, and profits, right? But you start with the investment in your employee. And as I go, kind of across the country with lots of clients that we've onboarded, I get to have conversations. I kind of piece this together. It's about the investments that we make to empower an agent, right? So agent engagement, it's really crucial to the customer satisfaction. Their job is hard. How do we make the hard things easier, right? So they can focus more. And I think happy agents can create happy customers, and that does lead to more revenue. I think the agent experience, said this way, it can be impacted by so many things, right? So many things. Let's go back to what I mentioned before about our North Star, right? For future-proofing communications, that's setting up and enabling successful conversations. So I think that's where it starts with how much an organization is really focused on enabling and empowering their agent. For example, in my opinion, I think the industry's maybe with self-serve and how kind of AI came on the scenes in a really passionate way in 23, AI became the buzzword, and it focused a lot, I think, on call deflection, where I've been having lots of conversations and where we're making investments is self-serve in part is important, no question, but critical is to empower the agent. So the future and future-proofing is about utilizing more AI, for example, to assist the agent, the human on the team that is on the front line with your customers. Not to say that self-serve and virtual assistants aren't important, but there's so much to be done, I think, in terms of where the future is going to make the job easier, if you will, easier with the things that are around what I really want to do, and that's help somebody on the other end.
Yeah, and that's just it there, right? It's not the purpose of deflection is not to limit the number of touch points between agents and customers. It's to make them better when they're most necessary. And if an agent is unable to focus, and we have stats showing that the typical agent right now does not come across as focused because they are dealing with so many headaches, both on the operational side as well as by issues that they really shouldn't be dealing with. That lack of focus does trickle down to the customer. And forget happiness for a second. If the agent doesn't even feel like they can pay attention to you, they're not going to make you feel very valued as a customer. And so ensuring that they can focus intently, that they are in the right mood, that they can give their all to that customer, that is where you're really going to start to see a lot of success. And that's where AI, of course, can play a great role. Now, on the other side of the coin, though, I think when we talk about the employee experience, we almost use it synonymously with agent experience. And I get it, right? Agents are the people talking to our customers. They're the front line. We have to empower them. But the employee experience is a lot bigger. And we know that in today's world, between issues becoming more complex, new channels, new technology emerging, distributed and remote work, there's so many challenges facing the supervisor as well. And if we don't look at ways to empower the supervisor to spend more time coaching versus time just sort of looking at administrative tasks and diving through numbers and trying to make sense of everything, they're not going to be in position to really elevate their contact center teams. And so what do we have to think about when it comes to empowering the supervisor in the future contact center?
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I think a couple things come to mind, right? And what's in the front of my mind is that service profit chain again, right? It's how do we set up the organization, invest in their people, so that's a supervisor, that's a manager. They're making those decisions. So that's what we need to do. That's what future proofing is about. It's about enabling the organization. Supervisors, they're leaders, they're also influencers, and they can be burdened, like they are. And we've got a lot of history in call center where we have burdened the administration, right? There's a lot to do behind the scenes. It's hard to do in some cases. As I mentioned up front, some organizations don't have a supervisor or a team to do these things, right? Player coaches, and they have a lot to do in terms of making sure that they're setting up their agents to be able to connect with their consumers, residents, members, patients, right? So not all call centers have supervisors, managers, and you need to pay attention and build the capabilities. That a supervisor needs, we talk about a no code, low code kind of way to go in and configure, right? So you go back to that user journeys, those communication journeys. A lot of supervisors are looking for those types of tools, right? How can we put capabilities where it's easy for them to configure, better yet, automate some tasks like coaching, right? So the way quality assurance coaching in the industry, it hasn't changed a lot since my early days as a call center agent. And there's, as a supervisor, we want a lot of automation. Why can't we automate with AI and be able to understand insights and, use different tools to help provide guidance, take some of those insights, apply change across the organization. So, I think there's a lot in the space of the supervisor. They are a manager, they're a leader, an influencer, and they're really part of orchestration. And unless they have an easy set of capability, one, understanding what's happening in a call center, two, the ability to quickly pivot, make change without calling somebody to do it. That's that's the role. Take the complexity out of that stuff, help them help the agent and make that expense. The last thing I'll say too is kind of back to the front end, right? And some of the conversational AI and virtual assistant, right? It's this leader at organizations that's thinking about their staffing. And I haven't met a call center in the last 3 years that has said, you know what, I have way too many agents, right? And they're looking at that ability to have a virtual assistant in need, right? Not only to deflect some of the monotonous things that an agent doesn't want to focus on or shouldn't have to, but it's this organization, it's this persona, the supervisor, that not only wants that virtual assistant, but they want to be able to tinker and deploy it in a way where it's a member of their team, right? So as a human agent, I think of my virtual agent truly as a teammate and understanding how we work and orchestrate together. And I think it's to me, that's what supervisors are looking for. How can I deploy all these things, but deploy it in such a way where a virtual agent is really part of my team and connected to my human agents.
All great points there. And, Pat, I know you've been sharing some great insights, but I want to take a moment to get the audience's insight here. So you all should be seeing a poll on your screen right now, which really looks at so many organizations are struggling with what is. And so what do you all see as challenges of moving your organization to what will be? And so you see some options there: technology, budget, leadership, or some uncertainty, or even some confidence that you already are at the future. If you want to take a moment to fill that out on your screen, and then we'll check the results in a second. Or a little shy here, but yeah, we're seeing people shy. There's a lot more people here than have filled this out so far. So definitely want to get some perspectives here. Give everyone just a few more seconds, and then we'll advance to the next slide to look at the results. All right, so these are starting to populate. So right now we are seeing, a good amount identifying budget as a huge challenge. And, I think the key here is that we think we can. And, certainly I think there are advances in the space that are going to enable organizations to be a little bit more efficient with how they upgrade, but also that leadership and technology challenges are really big. I mean, the truth is, if you don't have the right systems, and more importantly, at times, if you don't have the right mindset, and certainly if you have the duality of those factors, it can really stand in the way. And, right now, 0% feel that already at the future, which is very realistic. Everyone here is being honest. So if nothing else, we know we have an honest crowd right here. But I want to advance here because we've really had a chance to focus on challenges and needs and what the future should look like. But this isn't just about like an idealistic vision. It's not just about a rant. It needs to be what we need to be doing to go forward. So Pat, starting with you, what do you see as this notion of the future-proof contact center really entailing?
Yeah. So I think let's spend some time exploring that, right? So I think famous proverb here, and I think it matches with the polling question, right? So the best time to start future-proofing your contact center was 5 years ago. The second best time is now, right? So I think that last poll question does not surprise me. I think that's where we are. That's where we are as lots of different industries. These things aren't simple, right? So across lots of different industries, we do know that consumers have high expectations. They expect to pick up their mobile device, maybe get some answers that way. They expect to call someone, and that it's a human on the other end who has all the knowledge maybe of the past phone calls, the chat sessions, the secure mails that I've sent in. Like, right, Brian? You just boom, you expect that, right? I think that's really, it's an evolution, right? And that I think with the capability that we have today, it's something that is, can deliver on what will be. So as a consumer, I expect multiple channels, right? Chat, secure mail, social media. I want to dial that number. And yet it's my expectation that there's a human being on the other end. Whereas today, that's not always the case. We know that. But future-proofing is really about providing the capabilities, orchestrating it in the way that we've talked about it. And then I think the other important point that I want to mention is it's about the security too, right? So we support a lot of organizations, a lot of industries that require. It's a showstopper without. It's just part of what's required today. As I think about the polling questions, the answers are, I think, consistent with a lot of what I've seen in the market, rapidly evolving market of the call center enterprise communication, right? It's often complex and confusing, tech misunderstood, nuanced. How do I move forward? Do I need leadership? What's the budget? But many organizations, they're kind of stuck on the left, and they're looking to move to what will be. So clearly, there's a lot on the call here today. Those that are watching on demand, probably the same. So Linklive transforms the left to the right, what is to what will be, if you will. an AI-enabled platform, delivering seamless communication experiences across the contact center for the future. So, our customer success team too really is part of this, right? It's helping orchestrate and configuring the experience. The journey is important. We've talked about that. So, a self-serve conversational AI is great, but I want to transition to a human to make it seamless. So that's really what creates the personalized, meaningful conversation, right? It's this intersection, the blend of all four of these things, and a lot of what we're gonna demo here in just a bit.
Yeah, and I think you bring up some great points. I love this roadmap. These are all things to consider. But, do you have any examples of organizations that have made this transition and the success they've received as a result?
We do, and some of it is available on the QR code when we'll get to the next slide. But here's a real example of a customer who's successfully moved from what is to what will be. So Steve and his organization, they future-proofed their, not only their contact center, but they empowered all their employees on the same platform across the enterprise. So this is Neighbors Federal Credit Union. They really grappled with a lot of complexity that they had, so much traffic in banking. It's very much gone digital. They integrated a lot of our capability into their digital banking platform. They had a diverse set of products, a lot of vendor relationships. They needed to kind of adapt to one and pull those all together to make it easy for their contact center as well as all their employees. So they were able to really bring it all together into a single platform. Great example too of an organization. We leave about 15% of our roadmap to be influenced by customers. Steve clearly did that as we get closer to our customers helping us define what will be. That's a big piece of this too. So they saw a lot of value. In their case, they removed a lot of desk phones. They streamlined a lot of conversation on the front end with AI. More examples as we get to a QR code later. So that's Steve.
Yeah, and obviously, again, we're going to have plenty of opportunities to look at some tech, but and you can't ignore tech when you're talking about the future. But we also know that when you think about tech, it's not about just chasing the coolest features. No matter how cool companies like Linklive might be when it comes to those features, it's also about really thinking about the experience you want to elevate. So I know you've identified 4 sort of frameworks for looking at the essential elements of being there for customers. Walk us through those.
Yeah, so you think about them, you're looking at this slide is about how do we create that engaged employee, right? And really what it is, there's a lot on the slide. There's 4 boxes. They capture users, the jobs that those users do to deliver better outcomes for their constituent, right? The customer. So it starts with the green in that digital first. That is, where, a consumer has a mobile device in their hand, and there's a lot of capability there with digital first and a lot of what we talked about in terms of the high touch, around the clock, conversational AI, asynchronous conversations, media. Then it moves to the yellow. And that is your call center agent, right? The customer facing employee and the supervisor manager behind the scenes, right? Some of the things we've talked about there, it's how do I empower the agent? How do I more investment, agent assist AI in lots of different ways, conversational summary, sentiment, history, coaching, guidance. For the supervisor, it's about making it really easy to think about what number of conversations are going to happen across my team in the next 2 weeks to make sure I have the right skills, right? So, WFM, WEM, all that capability, wiring all those up. On the bottom, this is about everybody else. So many about future-proofing, it requires the enterprise, right? So many people leave that behind. They leave, the customer who's sitting in, or the employee who's sitting in a branch or working remote 3 days out of the week. They need to be on the same platform. And that's really what the gray and the blue is all about. So we're going to highlight some of these in our demo, but there's so much here in terms of these are the ingredients, right? The ingredients of how the conversation is kind of orchestrated.
And, we've already gotten several audience questions around AI. And We're fortune tellers. We guess that maybe on a contact center webinar, people might ask about AI. But I know with these slides, what's great here is that there's so much ambiguity and there's so much general optimism. 80% of contact center leaders do see AI as transformative for the contact center, but we often stop there. We just sort of say AI and expect things to magically fall into place. Here, what you've done is really taken 3 pillars of what AI should look like within the future of the contact center, within this ideal customer journey. So walk us through sort of what these 3 pillars mean and how they can drive the right investment and the right strategy moving forward.
Yeah, the 3 pillars are really about AI that matters, driving better outcomes for an organization and your users, right? So, the key is focusing on things that drive real value. These 3 pillars came out of conversations that we've had with so many of the organizations that we support, and a lot of the feedback has influenced our roadmap. So AI capabilities and in workflows that power different features that deliver better outcomes. So maybe it's about making the agent more efficient, right? And shortening their handle times, their wrap up times. It's about, if they don't speak the same language, well, we'll just translate for you on the go and make it easier. Just focus on the conversation, right? So it's about making the agent efficient. We talked a little bit about the effectiveness of supervisors, right? Today we can utilize AI to get to an 80, 90, 95% accuracy around how many conversations are going to happen in the future. Erlang C and spreadsheets 5 years ago didn't do that, right? So there's so much more around supervisors, around automating, coaching, guiding, right? And all these things lead to successful conversations. So I think, for us, on all these conversations that we've had with clients, they've helped us influence our roadmap. The 3 pillars are important. I think we have found that the place where a lot of it is starting is making the agent more efficient. And that's just a big part of our roadmap and what we're delivering on some of the things that you'll see here today. All right. Well, I think we've talked a lot. Here's probably time to get to some of the tech. With Linklive, it's about creating a customer experience that elevates a brand. And as the slide illustrates here, and Brian, we've talked about, it's either done digital first, voice, knowledge, AI, pulling all those things together in one, all-in-one platform. It's got to be trusted, like security matters, right? And Linklive is trusted by the world's most highly secure organizations. A little over 1,000 happy clients. We work to really transform conversations, make it efficient to support employees and customers no matter where they are. So we're pretty excited about it. I think what we want to do now is just take a pivot and show some of it in action. I know we're going to shift over here a little bit to Charlie. We're going to highlight a couple of use cases to highlight some of the things that we've talked about future proofing. So there's a QR code here. By no means will we ever be able to get through all the outcomes and the use cases. I'd love to. So scan the QR code. If you've got something in mind, we'd love to come back and highlight that too. So with that, I think, Charlie, you will begin to share your screen. And we're going to jump into this first one here, which is, we call it second-party data CRM, right? So this first demo, Charlie's going to be showing us how AI is helping agents, right? A lot about what I talked about. Let's make their lives easier, help them focus on the conversation. So it's an inbound call. Mm-hmm. He's going to accept it. The AI is going to integrate with the client CRM system, bring back some details about a prior conversation. Again, make it easier, help them monitor the call, what's happening, what's the sentiment, and then after it's complete, wrap it up, make it easier, mm-hmm. right? And do that. So Charlie, take it away.
Absolutely, Pat. Thank you for that introduction. On the screen here is exactly what Pat was talking about. So what I'm showing right now is Linklive.app. So this is our unified communications app. It's where agents go to work every day. Currently I did already place a call. That call had its chance to go through a virtual assistant. transitioned to a queue and is now ready for an agent to answer it. Through that journey, it captured information about the caller. It's already gone out and interacted with the CRM so that the agent will be informed when they answer the call. So what I'm going to do now is transition from my status from busy to online, and now the call is going to be coming into me. And now I'm on. Now, I do want to highlight a few of the things that we're seeing on the screen. So at this point, one of the very first things we'll see is the customer history. So here I'm able to go and see a complete record of all of the calls and texts and secure chats that have come in from this customer. I can click through them. I can go back, and as I click in, you'll see I have the complete call recording. I have the interaction with the IVR. And in this case, I even have the call transcript. So I'm really, really getting the context of the communications from this customer. I don't need to ask that caller to repeat the information or go further into some of their previous conversations. I now have a greater understanding of what they've been reaching out to us. Not only that, I can go down and I can even see the conclusion of the call. Like Pat said, we have an AI generated summarization. So I can go through, see the 3 or 4 sentence summary of the previous call or chat, and I can easily understand why they've reached out in the past. Additionally, right below that, I have my CRM integration. In this case, I have a table here that provides me additional context from that integration. I know a little bit more about the caller. In this case, I pulled over information about where they're from or maybe their job title. Really able to, design this for any of our clients for the needs that they have. Maybe it's to assist with further identifying them. At this point, maybe you are also noticing that over on the left there are some different graphs that are bouncing around, going up and down. If I unmute myself as the original caller, you'll see I'm going to start to get more context. And the thing I'm doing here is not only am I scoring the tone of the agent, I'm also able to see the consumer sentiment as well. And I'm really able to then go in and maybe tailor my conversation based off of that information. I'm also giving the agent the overall score of the tone of the consumer in this instance. And then as I kind of come towards the conclusion of a phone call and I want to enter my wrap up, you'll see I'm provided a timer. You'll see that I'm able to set my disposition. Maybe this person called in and was asking about some deposit services at a bank. And I'm also, again, remember at the very beginning, I showed you when I went through the customer history, I was able to see the summarization. And the next agent that takes a call on our system is going to see that same summarization as they look through the customer history. So Pat, I think I'd like to hand it back to you for our second demo.
Love that. So there's so much there. So good example. We'll come back to the agent experience a little bit. So you were looking at the full agent experience, and I think Charlie, the other thing I would mention too is there's so much configuration. Back to my point about orchestration, right? It's not only where you're placing on the consumer side, but a lot of what Charlie was highlighting is so much configuration that's easy to do. We're always here available to help our clients. We'll set it up, but things like capabilities that would be at the queue level down to the user level. So much there. All right, so let's shift into a second demo, and we're now going to go through some more agent assist. In this case, it's chat translation. So we've talked a lot today about empowering and enabling an agent, right? And the reality of it is that sometimes I don't speak the same language. I don't have all of the skills. That's obviously a key factor in delivering a successful conversation. So not everybody speaks in the same language as an agent. Not all agents have the same skills. And it's hard sometimes as a supervisor to plan for supporting it. Language lines are available, they're expensive, and the world just needed something more, right? So we've utilized AI to translate up to 75 of the most common languages in real time. Charlie's going to highlight that here, so you can communicate with your customers and not worry about the translation, not worry about whether or not you have the next available agent to do that. So it reduces a lot of reliance on multilingual agents. So Charlie, take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Pat. I'm going to kind of describe what we're seeing on the screen again. Again, underneath agent view this time, this is again our unified communications app. And then over on the right, underneath consumer view, this is Linklive secure chat. So at this point, I'm able to, initiate my chat, type in my name, and like Pat said, select from one of those 75 languages, whatever my native language is that I want to chat in, I get to select. So in this case, I'm going to start a chat and I'm going to be interacting with my financial institution. And I'm actually chatting in because I lost my card yesterday. So as I enter my response here, you'll see that I am going to be entering information about my lost or stolen card. Let me restart that real quick. I apologize.
That's okay. That's what happens with live demos here.
It's always fun. Let me try one other thing.
So as Charlie is going through this, I'll also mention just from one of the outcomes here. We worked with an organization to fast forward this, and they actually found a significant increase in being able to reach their consumers. So this was a not-for-profit that ultimately gets funding based on the number of organizations and residents that they help. So this was one that really helped them significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems that I've gone through the AI interaction. One of the things on our AI is if we get through and we're not having, or maybe the consumer's having some issues with the AI, it's going to recognize that and hand it off. At this point, I'm going to start chatting back and forth. You'll see as an agent now in real time, I'm here, I'm translating my response. So I started in English and told them, thanks for stopping by. They get to see it in Spanish in this case. And also if they want to see the English translation, they can, as the consumer continues to chat back and forth, you'll see that I'm going to be able to assist them. And they want me to put a hold on their card. And I'll say, sure. And at this point, they're going to be happy that that is done. And we've gone through and we've been able to help that person. Now, a couple of other things with the digital interaction or the secure chat, we have other capabilities. So if you did start an interaction and you needed to, for just simplicity's sake, share your screen, the consumer can easily do that. They can just share a desktop, a tab, or an entire screen. And you're able to see it as an agent. Just simply, if you needed to add a voice or you needed to add in video, again, all you have to do is click. There's no downloads required. There's no reason to install any additional software. It's all there. It's all part and capabilities of the browser or the applications it's deployed in. All right, Pat, I'm going to wrap up this session.
Love that. Love that.
And head it back to you.
That's AI chat translation. It's kind of a front end of a staple around chat. But great example of reducing a reliance on multilingual agents. Slashes the handle time, allows you to serve more customers. So let's get on with the third one, our final demo here. For this demo, we're going to go back to the agent experience. So recall the first one that Charlie shared. So we're going to take it to the next level, right? Next level, I really want to be able to show what could be and what will be with Linklive. And that is AI that can access a second party system, right? Your solution, our client solution, in the back office, CRM, or in this case, it's a knowledge base. One of the things that we found in all the conversations is that agents, they often struggle to focus on the conversation and have a successful one because they're just burdened with pivoting to other things, right? Other systems. They ask me this, I got to go there to get the answer for that. So we're going to show a demo here where we'll utilize AI to pull these things together with a knowledge base to provide the next best response. Charlie?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Pat. As I start this demonstration, exactly what Pat was talking about, one of the first things you're going to see as the agent in Linklive.app is I'm getting some insights into best practices. So in this case, the system sharing those best practices with me about, Bruce here who needs a warm place to sleep. So in this case, Bruce is a resident. Maybe I'm an agent within the 211 contact center, and I'm going to help him, and I want to understand the context and about emergency shelters. As the interaction goes along, what you'll see is I'm provided with next best response. So here I have the option to either just send this response, or I can click the pencil and the edit button, and I can go through and tailor the response to maybe a little more personalized message that I'm going to be sending over to the consumer in this point, or the resident. Now, as this continues along, you'll see I send that information off to Bruce, and I'm getting some information back. Again, another recommended response, but I'm also going to be able to gather insights maybe from a knowledge base, a database, information that maybe gives me even further insights into the data I have available as an agent. So agents don't manually need to go through and dig through that knowledge base. We're providing them, based off of the conversation so far, the capability to quickly click in and go to the appropriate information. It's funny, Pat, you said that one of your first jobs was as a contact center. Mine was too. I was the campus operator for the university I attended. I didn't have any information. I had a 3-ring binder I had to dig through, and I had not even caller ID coming into me. So what I'm seeing and what's coming is it's so great, and it's going to be so helpful for organizations. Now, as I continue, I'm going to be providing additional information back to the consumer in this case, or the resident. He's really looking for a bad weather shelter, and I'm now getting his location, and I'm going to be sending back the nearest shelter. The idea here is I have all of this access to my organized information and my localized solutions for that information, and I'm able to share it back. With that, Pat, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Charlie. And well done on the demos. I think just again to reiterate, we just looked at where AI is going to incorporate knowledge based on and providing that next best response. Again, all set up securely to integrate either your own content, or in the case that we just looked at, to integrate another partner of yours. So super excited about that. And I guess I'll just say, thank you. As I search for my video here, thank you. Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Brian. I think that was, I'm excited about that. Hopefully everybody saw some value in the audience there. So seeing Linklive in action, and as I mentioned up front, if you have a use case or an outcome that's interested you, we'd love to personalize a demo so you can scan the QR code there. So Brian, back to you.
Yep, so we're obviously, as anyone can look at the clock, pretty tight on time, but there were a few themes to the questions that I feel like I definitely want to cover, 2 that stood out. And then there's a few others I know Pat and Charlie and the team will follow up with you personally about regarding certain capabilities and things of that sort. But the first, and I think you did a great job, Charlie, through the demo of answering this, but anything either of you want to share as far as making seamless connection between channels a reality? Because if we go back, we said we all talk about it, no one delivers. So where are we when it comes to technology that makes this a reality right now? And then, of course, we'll continue to do so as we move forward.
Yeah, I think we're on that journey, right? In terms of what will be. So I think there's lots of organizations that are leaning into this, Brian, thinking about orchestrating the communication, putting AI to work mostly with the agent experience is critical, also with the end consumer. I think some of the things that are coming, there's more to come, right? There's more to come. I think of the future being really understanding more about each caller, matching that to an agent, just more around having successful conversations.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the first step is sort of making sure that there's not a need for repetition, that there's not a need for friction and struggle as you move between channels. The second is having them work in that truly complementary way where you're getting the best value you can out of the digital channel, the best value you can out of the phone channel, the best value of AI versus the agent. It all comes together to ensure you're getting the best service and channels are working together, not just side by side. And so that's really what the future looks like. And the second question, of course, obvious when we're talking about what this webinar is going to look at in the future, the contact center concerns AI. And I really like how one of our attendees framed this here. They said, are there lessons you can share about the implementation of AI solutions that you've learned, as well as top 3 or top 5 mistakes that maybe you've seen as companies embark down that journey?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the mistakes, right? I think it's think about your brand and how you want to deploy it. Security, right? And understanding how you're putting it to work. Is it truly secure? Do I have the ability to audit that? Do I have the ability to understand where it was put to use, how it was handed off, those kinds of things. So I think that's really important in terms of kind of understanding. And as I mentioned several times, I think the feedback around choosing where you deploy it, right? And really thinking those things through. How am I adding value? How am I making an agent's job easier, either in that deflection component or making their job, helping them focus more on the conversation?
Yeah, I think, Pat, that hits it perfectly. I know that so many AI tools, especially customer-facing AI, are sold on you're going to increase call deflection, or you're going to decrease call volume, and that's the selling point. And don't get me wrong, I know we all have budgets here. We all want to, manage our operations and be more efficient. But what you want to be looking at too is, what does this mean for customer satisfaction? What does it mean for lifetime value? What does it mean for agent experience and their retention as well? If you're deflecting calls and you increase self-service containment, but every customer hates you and they go to a competitor, that wasn't a great use of the AI solution. So instead, calibrating it based on by virtue of deflecting, now customers can get what they want that's simple a lot faster without waiting on hold. And that reduces queues for those who do need the agent, who then get that more personal touch. You should see an increase in satisfaction, an increase in loyalty and retention, an increase in performance. That's when you know AI is working. And really, that's the theme for this entire discussion, right? It's not deploy digital channels because it's trendy, because some guys named Charlie, Pat, and Brian said to. It's thinking about weaving digital in because when used correctly, it brings the experience to the next level. It makes agents a lot more productive. So that's definitely really key as well. And then when you can start to make things more specific, looking at who the customer is, having that context, knowing what they're going through, and building experiences around that because of all these different data points you have, that's when you have a contact center that's really built for the future. So that about does it. We are a little past time here, but Pat or Charlie, anything you want to say as we wrap up before we say goodbye to our audience today?
I just appreciate it. I think, I'd love to have more conversations. If there's a particular outcome that you're thinking about, we'd love to talk about it and what future-proofing means to your organization. So thanks, everybody, for their time.
Yeah,
definitely. And I want to thank Charlie, thank the Linklive team. It was great seeing that this is a reality already right now that's only improving. As we start to better understand what works and what doesn't, as AI becomes more robust, Charlie, everything you showed, is going to enable us to not just solve problems, but anticipate future ones and get one step ahead of them. So thank you for your insights with that demo as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Great. And on behalf of CCW Digital, on behalf of Linklive, thanks to everyone who joined us. Again, I know the team will follow up with those few questions we didn't get to. And, feel free to reach out, because you saw the QR code earlier. You saw the chance to get a more personalized demo, really learn what this can do for you. I think that learning, that awareness, that specificity, that's the key to the next generation of the contact center. So thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next time.